Well, folks, welcome back. Today we are going to be breaking down one of the biggest political battles on the horizon. We are going to be looking at the top targets for House Democrats in the 2026 midterm elections. This would be a critical fight for Democrats to flip the House and for Republicans to hold the House to be able to implement President Trump's agenda in the second half of his second term. Now, Republicans right now have a very, very fragile grip on power, and Democrats are going to do everything they can to flip that. We're going to be diving into each district that the Democrats are looking at flipping. Now, we know Republicans hold a roughly 5-seat majority over the Democrats after the election in 2024. They have a 220 to 215 majority, razor thin. And Democrats need just a net 3-seat gain to take control, assuming that there are no vacancies in the next Congress. Now, midterms, historically, we all know, favor the party that is out of power. It typically is a repudiation of the party in power. There have been a few exceptions. George W. Bush's first midterms after 9/11. Even you could say President Biden's midterm in 2022 was not as good for Republicans as it was expected to be. It was more of a red trickle, you could say. There were seats. Democrats flipped a House in Alaska. They flipped New Mexico, District Number 2. They flipped a number of seats. Look at this. California, District 25, Congressional District 25. They were able to flip that. Now, the Republicans did make some good gains. You look at California, District 3. Go down here, 41 and 40. You got Young Kim, won a very, very competitive race. You look at Steele. I believe this is Michelle Steele. Let's see if it'll bring it down to us. Yeah, Michelle Steele. Very, very close election won by the Republicans that helped them eventually flip control of Congress. It was really in California. In New York, we saw a number of Republicans win seats that they haven't won before. New York Congressional District 4, District 3, District 17, District 19. These were huge wins for the Republican Party. The Democrats flipped no seats in New York. You look at Wisconsin Congressional District 3, Iowa District Number 3. These were huge flips. Even in Texas, Congressional District 15 was a huge flip for the Republicans. Monica de la Cruz, huge flip. And we know that Democrats are going to be targeting them again. These congressmen have targets on their back. There is no doubt about it. Even though it was not as great of a midterm for the Republicans as you would hope, we still ended up winning in 2024. Now, going into 2026, there are going to be key factors that are in play. Ultimately, you're going to be looking at what are the holdovers from 24. The economy, inflation, the cost of goods. Those are all going to be in play. Some things that could also see what eventually happens with Trump's tariffs. What happens with reciprocal tariffs? What inflationary data comes out from that? Where do we see prices start to increase in our economy? What does the U.S. get in return? Is Trump able to get to a trade deal with all these countries? Reportedly, there's 136 countries that are currently negotiating deals with the United States. 136. That is a lot. So we have a lot that's going to play out here. There's just a lot to play out. We are still a ways away. But the Democrats ultimately lost ground in 2024 and see 2026 as a rebound year. And so they have a number of districts that they are going to be targeting. And we're going to look at a number of them, but some of the big ones. Alaska, their at-large congressional district. Obviously, this was a flip from the Democrats. This had been held by the Republicans for a while. Don Young, I believe, had held this since the 70s. I mean, this guy had been in Congress for a very, very long time. Look at this. 1973, he was initially elected. Well, then Alaska went to ranked choice voting. In 2022, the Democrats were able to flip this seat. Former Governor Sarah Palin was running in this election. And the Republicans were able to flip it back in 2024. This will be a big target for the Democrats. The Republican only won by about 2 points here. This is going to be a huge target for them. You look in Arizona, Eli Crane, Congressional District 2, that will be huge. I believe Congressional District 1 and 6 will also be targets for the Democrats, but I know they've got a big target on Eli Crane's back. You go into places like California. You look down here, 41 and 40. You have Young Kim and Calvert, who both, these are competitive seats, even though I know Young Kim she won by 10 points. This is still a seat that Democrats are prepared to target. They probably will most likely also target Congressional District 3 when it comes to it. And then Colorado. In Colorado, you have Colorado Congressional District 8 right up here. This is a very, very close election, won by less than a point. Gabe Evans, big target. Incumbent, was able to beat an incumbent Democrat at that time, won the race by about 3,000 votes. Going to be a huge target for the Democrats. We're going to look at some other big names that are big in Trump's circle. You look at people like Anna Paulina Luna. She won by roughly about 9 points in her most recent election. Democrats say, hey, this is a seat we think we can be competitive in. Even in Florida, another Florida congressman that Democrats really have their eyes on is Corey Mills. And like we said earlier, Democrats are even targeting seats that Donald Trump or the current incumbent won by double digits. And they're still saying, hey, this is something where we think we can be competitive. They think this is a place to be competitive. You can also go into Iowa. Now, this has been a huge election. Huge election. Mariette Miller Meeks. This is going to be a huge election. And ultimately, because you go back to 2020, this is when, and this is just in the state. Let's see, District 1, Republican gain right here. Look at this. This was won by 1.178 percentage points. This was won literally by 6 votes. And we know this was that race where Democrats tried to overthrow this race. At the same time they were calling out Trump for election denialism, this was the same race where Nancy Pelosi tried to get Congresswoman Miller Meeks thrown out of Congress. She tried to overthrow this election. There is zero doubt about it. So this will be a huge target for Democrats going into the next election. Of course, Congressional District 3, which I believe was a flip. Yep, it was a flip back in 2022. This had been held by Democrats after redistricting. But ultimately, only won by about 4 points. They really believe that they have a shot here. You know, if you're looking at this map right here, this is 2024. If we want to, let's copy this map real quick, and then we're going to edit this, and we're going to look and see what it would be if we shift this entire map. So right now it is, let's see, it's the Republicans have about a 5-seat majority. If we shift this by, let's just say, 2 percentage points. If we shift the entire popular vote by 2 percentage points, this is what you see. Democrats take control. They win in places like Iowa, Congressional District 3, Congressional District 2. There's a lot of places. Now, ultimately, you still have places like Alaska, Florida, where there are some big wins. Still some big wins for the Democrats. But ultimately, this is if the Democrats see that shift, they could very easily take control of this election. I have no doubt about it. Okay, now let's just get back to our previous map that we had on here. Here we go. This is the current map that we're in right now. Some other big names that they're going after. One that kind of surprised me. Andy Barr. Andy Barr in Congressional District. Let's just see if we can click on it. Let's see if we can find Andy Barr on here. Let's see where. Oh my gosh, where is he? Andy Barr. Oh, you know what a dummy I am. I click on Tennessee. What a dumbass I am. Excuse me. Sorry, that's probably not a very nice thing to say. But Andy Barr, look at this. This is a seat that Democrats are looking to target, where Republicans won by 26 points. 26 points. And Democrats have this on their list to target. You know, jump over to Michigan. This could also be some huge races that we see in Michigan. John James won Michigan Congressional District 10. He is retiring. He is running for governor in Michigan. That could be a more competitive race without an incumbent there. You look at Congressional District 7, where you have Tom Barrett of Michigan's Congressional District, who won a pretty tight race. It's like, I know it was only 4 points or 3.5 points that decided it, but this was a flip for the Republicans in this election. Now, obviously, a big one that's always in the news, we always see it, Congressional District 2, Don Bacon in Nebraska. This is a seat that outran I believe this seat voted for Kamala Harris by many points. I believe it's still single digits. But this seat voted for Kamala Harris, while at the same time re-electing Don Bacon by roughly 6,000 votes in this election here. That's going to be a huge target. Now, obviously, you go back to 2020, 22, you look at this. Don Bacon was able to survive. You go back to 2020, Don Bacon, in a, what you could say, tough year for Republicans, was able to survive by roughly 4 points. Go back to 2018. This is another huge, this has been a target for Democrats for years, and they have not been able to flip it. We're going to see what happens there. Ultimately, I'm still going to say that this is probably, I have this as, I would say, a lean Republican seat. But also, I think the district in general has been trending closer and closer to the Democrats. I think that the demographic makeup of the county or the congressional district has moved closer to them. But some other big names that we see in here. You jump over to Pennsylvania. You look at places, Pennsylvania 8, Pennsylvania 7, Pennsylvania 10. These are all going to be huge. Even Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania 1, this will be a huge target for Democrats. And it's kind of weird. They're going after a number of people who won by 10 points, 20 points, 30 points. It's pretty impressive. Even Andy Ogles in Tennessee, he was obviously the one who introduced the bill that would allow President Trump to run in 2028. They believe they can run after him. Now, he won by 27 points in this race. 27 points, and Democrats see this on, they have this on their radar. So obviously, some big races that the Democrats are going to be trying to go after. They're going to go after. Even some of these more toss-up races. I can expect, Arizona 6, Colorado 8, Iowa 1, Michigan 7, New York 17, Pennsylvania 7, and Virginia 2. You think about Virginia 2, you talk about all of the federal jobs there. I think that is a big power play for the Democrats, is they are going to look at Virginia. Let's take a look real quick at Virginia. Obviously, there were no flips, but there were some close elections. Some very, very close elections that they could potentially go after. Virginia 1, Virginia 2. Now, do I think they're going to flip any of these over here? Probably not. But there's 2 congressional districts when they only need to net 3 in total that most likely were going to be hurt by the layoffs in the federal government. Now, we know that the Democrats, they're targeting the 35 GOP-held seats in total. It's ambitious. It can be doable, especially when you only need 3 seats to win. But if I were the Democrats, and I'm not here to give out advice to the Democrats because I don't want them to win, but prioritizing swing districts, plus it's like I just don't get why they're looking. Maybe they're just trying to see what they can do in some of these more Trumpy districts. Some ones that really surprised me, you look at Anna Paulina Luna. You look at Corey Mills in Florida. Those are some big names that I'm not so sure why the Democrats are going to be going, is that money well spent? Hey, whatever. If you want to waste your resources there, that's totally fine by me. But if they want to win, they need to prioritize those swing districts. Places like Iowa 1. You look at places like Alaska. You look at places like Colorado 8. You want to go into Pennsylvania 8. Pennsylvania 7. Those are going to be huge. Even if you go into New York. Now, ultimately, the Democrats flipped a number of seats that the Republicans had won in 2022 that helped them get to that midterm victory. You look at this map, very, very different than what it looks like now. Now you have Democrats flip New York 2. Look at this. 2022. Wow. Barely won it. You look at New York 19. It's like you talk about the very, very slim majority that the Republicans have. Why do you think they had to pull Elise Stefanik from the UN ambassador nomination? They can't afford to lose anymore. They really can't. But ultimately, these are also going to be huge targets for Republicans. And we're going to do another video here very quickly in the future talking about the Republicans. Where can the Republicans go on the attack? Where can they go? And so for the Democrats, I think they really need to focus in on a couple districts. I'm saying we're going to kind of go from west to east, Alaska, overall. I don't think there's much to go after here in California. I'm sure there are some seats, but California 41 will probably be the only one that I'm looking at. If you're a Democrat, I'm probably looking at Arizona 1, Arizona 6 to go after, Will Hurd, Colorado District 3, and then looking at 8. I think those are going to could be close races there. You look now, looking towards, what is this, Montana here, Montana Congressional District 1. That could be something that the Democrats go after. I think Nebraska 2 is a good place for Democrats to spend some political capital. I think Iowa Congressional District 1 and 3 are good places to expend political capital. Wisconsin, I'm going to say 3. I'm not really sold on any of these other races. Now, you look at the Supreme Court election, I think this would be a good target because ultimately, if you're looking at Democrat politics in Wisconsin, there's a number of counties right here that are outside of Dane County that this is kind of where Democrats can win. Whoever wins these counties down here basically wins the state. And same with down here because you have Racine County down here, and I forget there's one other county that's right below it. If you carry those as a Democrat, you're going to carry the state most likely. Looking at Michigan, I think Michigan 7 is a good place, and probably Michigan 10 without an incumbent there. I think that could be a good potential pickup for the Democrats. You go into, like we said, Pennsylvania 8 and 7, I think could be close. Pennsylvania 10, I think could be a good place for Democrats to go on the advantage. Also, there's a number, Virginia 2 and Virginia 1, I think could be places. Virginia 2 probably more than Virginia 1, ultimately. But then look down in New York. Look, New York 17. Look, New York 1. Those could be places where Democrats could really, really see some improvements in those seats. And that's where I see the big ones at for the Democrats. If they really want to win, I'd focus there. I would not be focusing on places like District 15 in Texas or, going against Mills or Anna Paulina Luna in Florida. I just don't think that's money well spent for the Democrats. But hey, that's how they want to spend, whatever. But we know a lot of it is going to come down to messaging and focusing on those kitchen table issues, the economy, housing cost, healthcare, all of those things. And ultimately, how they communicate with voters. I think a big mess up by the Democrats in 2024 was how they talked with voters, where they met voters. They were not going to these alternative media sites, the podcast. They weren't going there. They were going to the traditional places where Democrats have always gone. That's how Trump won, was by using alternative media to reach those low propensity voters who were voting for Trump. They weren't voting for Republicans, they were voting for Trump. And we know the Democrats are going to attack Trump on his policies. They're going to attack him on tariffs, federal layoffs. There's so many things that they're going to attack him on. But granted, when it comes to tariffs, how are they going to attack him? Are they going to attack him for tariffs across the board? But if he's able to get some victories out of this, how are they going to spin that? They want to hit him as the party of the oligarchs. Well, 80% of the billionaires who donated in the 2020 race donated to Kamala Harris. So it's kind of hard to say that Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they're the party of the oligarchs because he has one billionaire. Okay. But we know the Democrats, the infrastructure, we've talked about this a lot. The Democrats have the infrastructure from the bottom up. And ultimately, the Democrats are going to be the ones who are more fired up. For the same reason, Republicans, especially in like New York, Florida, Georgia, were fired up in 2022. You look at 2014, Obama, 2010. Those are great years for Republicans. They were fired up. And the Democrats are fired up too. Can the Republicans fire up their voters in the same way Democrats are going to be able to fire them up? Democrats are going to meet people where they need to be met. Door knocking, town halls, digital ads. They are going to really have a rebranding strategy post-2024. Now, granted, Republicans aren't just going to sit still and take this laying down. No chance that that's going to happen. It will not happen. They're eyeing probably 25 to 35 Democrat seats to expand their majority as well. And these includes blue districts in red-leaning states. You want to look at the 2024 election. We're just going to find it here. These are the seats where Democrats control, where Donald Trump, these are 13 districts in which Donald Trump won in 2024 that are represented by Democrats. So you have 13 districts here versus Republicans where there's 3. You have 3 seats that voted for Donald Trump or that elected a Republican and voted for Kamala Harris. And Trump's base could be fired up, but ultimately Trump's base is a lot of that is low propensity voters. Trump's not on the ballot. They're going to struggle. We need to find new ways as a Republican Party to get people out. How can we get our voters out to the booth when Donald Trump is not on the ballot? That is going to be a huge issue going forward. How do we get our voters out when Trump A is not on the ballot, but ultimately Trump's going to die someday. And it's going to be a horrible day, but Donald Trump will pass away just like all of us. And when that happens, how are Republicans going to get their voters out? How are they? And we know that midterms turnout is always lower, which often, it typically used to favor conservatives, but now since we're the party of low propensity voters, it's going to favor the Democrats, just like we saw in the special elections. And here's the thing. A lot of people are trying to say that the special elections in 2025 there were 2 in Florida, Congressional District 1 and Congressional District 6, and then Wisconsin statewide. I don't think it's indicative of anything. It's a off-cycle election. Not even, it's a election in April. Only the most motivated people were going out. The low propensity voters were not. It's just not. Some other things you have to consider is in Ohio, there's going to be redistricting. So there could be some seats that become competitive in Ohio after the redistricting is done. So we're just going to have to see how this all lays out after that. And then, of course, retirements. There may be some safe seats, but they're safe. But if like, here we go. Chris Pappas, Andy Biggs, Byron Donalds, John James, John Rose. I think this race right here in this race could be close. I think they could be. Looking at 24 up in, and that was, oops, where are we at right here? Let's look at Jared Golden, Pingree. Okay, where is Pappas up here? Oh, excuse me. What a dummy I am. I'm looking at Maine. New Hampshire. Pappas is running there. But we're just going to have to see, what is the mood of the country? Is the anti-Trump energy just going to be able to outweigh the Republican energy that they have? That is really what it's going to come down to. Are the Democrats more energized than the Republicans? Can Republicans energize their voters to give another vote of confidence for President Trump? So that is the breakdown of the Democrats' 2026 House targets. It is going to be a high-stakes fight with I don't want to say wide open map, because there aren't really there are competitive places or competitive districts, but ultimately you're looking at a list of probably a dozen, maybe 24 that are going to be super competitive. And still, you have to remember, Democrats are going to have to spend money in places like North Carolina 1, California 45 and 43 and 13. That Democrats, it's going to be tight there still. There's no doubt about it. And they're going to have to spend money to defend the incumbents there. So are Democrats going to be able to flip 3 seats that they need, or will the GOP be able to hold firm? So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you found this content useful or helped you gain any knowledge, smash that like button down below, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future.